everyone to the February 3rd Board of Selectmen meeting. I'm John Jeffries, Chairman of the Board of Selectmen. We're meeting this evening via Zoom consistent with Governor Baker's orders of March 2020. So I'd ask everyone just to please take care and share their screen. When we introduce, or when you are introduced, would you please state your name, the board or the group that you're representing, and we will recognize you in our order this evening. So before we begin, I just want to ask Bob and Robin to identify themselves as being present for our recording.
Hi, I'm Robin Hunter, Board of Selectmen, present.
Thank you.
Why the emphasis? I'm Bob Springer. I think also of the Board of Selectmen.
Well, he said to identify the group you're with. So.
Oh, I thought that was a trick question.
She's being consistently precise. Oh, thank you both. So our first order, before we get to our first order of business with Sir James Dolly, Kate, do we have any citizens speak, or Jim, do we have any, Kate, do we have any citizens speak before Jim?
We have, I haven't received any emails, but there might be someone attending now that I'm not, if you want to ask.
Do we have anyone in the gallery? You could probably see the gallery view. I've just pulled up in the gallery. I don't see anything on the chat, but Dave Sullivan, are you monitoring the chat? Anyone wants to make any comments before we get started?
I don't see anything in the chat. I don't see anyone with their hand raised.
Wonderful. We're going to move to our very first item this evening, which is our fence review presentation. And Sir James Dolly is with us this evening. Is that the correct title when you are?
In the UK, it is correct. But just can't. That's fine.
We finally get to know what you've been up to as a fence viewer.
Well, a part of the speech will be about complaining about how the surveyors and the building code and the building inspectors have stolen all my work. Justifiably. But this is the first time I'll report as a fence viewer, and it's singular because a couple of my old selectmen friends have left my fence viewing. But this is an old, antiquated sort of job created in the mid-1600s that handled disputes between neighbors and so forth, so on. Again, if I was to be questioned whether we need this in the town of Dover, I'd probably say no. It's traditionally, as you get off the Board of Selectmen, you if you were to redo the committees and boards in Dover, I'd probably suggest getting
Hey, Jim, we keep losing you. The audio.
Audio.
you lose me.
Now, I missed most of what you just said. If you could repeat it.
You didn't miss any.
You're out again, for me anyway.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Jim.
Really?
Like sometimes, like now you're perfectly clear, and then
Okay.
yeah,
can you
now
hear
you're
me?
perfect.
Okay. So this particular board's been around for a long time. And since I've been on it, which I believe is either 5 or 6 years, I've had no disputes that I've had to handle. And again, 2, Carol, you had 2?
You and I together.
Thing. So it's just not me. This is a great connection. I think I know what it's doing. My daughter is screwing around with my Bluetooth. So
Those kids.
honestly. So Carol has indicated that we've seen 2 disputes over the last probably 7 years then. I haven't handled anything, and again, it's the building code, the building inspectors, and the surveyors who really should handle this thing going forward. That's my report.
Well, thank you. Robin, care to comment?
Any questions, really?
Thank you for your service. This seems to be a very grueling job.
Well, every day I check my emails for disputes
Right.
to bed, so. Any questions at all on my comments on whether it's required or anything?
Well,
No.
I like the historical perspective, and I just want to know if you get a uniform or any special tools that you need, like night goggles to view fences in the evening.
You went out. You cut out. Jim, I couldn't hear you. I don't know if anyone else could.
I don't know why. I just adjusted my Bluetooth, so that shouldn't be the issue. So, is that still the case? You can't hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay, so why don't we end that? This part of the Selectmen's meeting on that
Jim,
note.
Your recommendation is with regards to the review post, no pun intended, the review position, we would be well served to consolidate under one of the inspector's roles.
That is 100% correct.
Thank you. Bob, anything to add?
You guys always have your Bluetooth on.
I heard about Bluetooth. Bob?
Hey, Jim, thank you. Thank you for your work as a selectman, and thank you for your work as a fence viewer. And it's good to see you.
Robin? I think we're still getting Jim's background.
I think someone may have taken over his Bluetooth.
Oh, there you go.
I think that may be his daughter.
Better get off now, Jim.
Exactly. Well, we're going to thank Jim for his service, as Bob and Robin both did, and we are going to move to item number 2, which is a discussion of the AT&T lease of the space on the tower at the site of the highway garage. And Bill Solomon is the gentleman who just appeared on your screen. Bill is an attorney, formerly with Stoneham, as Stoneham's town council.
Yes.
And Bill has been in our employment with regards to the lease, in regards to the leases of the cell tower. And as you have, if you've been following along at home, this is our 3rd or 4th meeting with Bill. And this evening is just a summary of what we've been presented with Bill and what we have taken action on in the past. Bill?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. I couldn't help but notice with Mr. Dolly, it was fascinating. The only time you could hear him, and it was always working, is when he said to you, "Can you hear me?" And you would say yes, and then he'd go back into the substance, and you couldn't hear him again. So I was talking about a guy who straddles the fence, right? So thank you for having me back. The good news is we have the proposed lease before you. It's been approved by AT&T in the sense they said they will sign it if the board votes it. The only change, I provided a memo with respect to the changes. There were a few superfluous pages that back and forth with my expert typist who puts this into, although I do all the typing when I work on it, it's a complicated document. And as such, when she was compiling it, there was part of the old document at the end that's been removed. The only provision that was in the RF, the request for bids, and that there was a space for that wasn't in your last draft, was the performance and payment bond. If there's construction work by AT&T, they need to get a performance bond and a payment bond for their goods and services that people provide. Other than that, the lease is the same. It's a 10-year lease with 2 5-year options for AT&T. The beginning annual rent is $60,000. That goes up 2.5% a year. Not part of the lease for this document, but separately, we have just the schedule of rent payments, so everyone knows what that amounts to. There's definitions at the end. It's a strong lease to try to simplify what Dover does, unlike any community in the Commonwealth, to its credit. The first time 20 years ago or 17 years ago and now is that most communities that have property where a cell tower could be placed go out, look for a company, usually a cell tower company, American Tower or another company, but not the wireless providers at this point. And that company or companies will bid to put their tower on your land, and they will bid a certain amount depending on what the minimum is. And they will also bid a certain percentage for co-locators on that pole. Again, that could be 20% for each co-locator or 50. So that if they bid 50,000 for the property to put the pole, they might say, and if there's 3 other spaces on the pole, we'll propose giving the town 30% of the revenue from each of those companies, or 40% or 20%. What Dover does here is it goes out and says, all right, the lead, the highest bidder has to be responsible for the pole, originally build it. And the 3 other companies who are on the pole each bid to be on the pole based on the town's minimum, making that payment to the town. So so rather than getting one payment from a pole owner and a percentage of the payments that that pole owner gets from the other carriers that are on the pole, instead Dover gets payment from all 4 companies, which leads to materially greater revenue for the town, and yet serves well each of the companies who work together and know they can be there and get up at what is a great location at the DPW garage area, which is really isolated and by itself. So with that said, there are no changes from the last lease. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer. It's a strong lease. We have 2 other companies that have bid, we're finalizing leases with, and there's still 1 remaining spot since T-Mobile and Sprint are now on the tower, but they've combined. We only had a bid from T-Mobile for 1 spot, but Sprint still has another 3 years on that tower, and Dover can go out looking for, see whether T-Mobile wants another spot, and now there's also a dish TV that provides wireless service that express an interest in being in this tower. So it's reasonably likely, if not very likely, that the 4th spot
Bill, you just muted yourself. I don't know if
sorry. So I said it's reasonably likely that the town will have a fourth antenna, as it now has, on this, at least for this pole, sometime between now and the expiration of the Sprint lease in 2025. So be happy to answer any questions. Very pleased. I think this works for all parties, and it's a strong lease going forward for at least 10 years and really likely 20 years under the terms.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the report. I'd just also like to remind everyone who's watching this evening or viewing this as a recording that there's 27 pages of the lease that are available, and that will be also available in this document from the Zoom recording and also on our website. Robin, any questions, comments for Bill?
No, I mean, looks like we got it across the finish line. So, I think there's nothing substantive that has changed. So it's, as we had said before, it's really a great outcome for the town. So thank you.
Thank you.
Bob?
So I just want to make sure that, so Bill, how long have you been working on this?
Well, over a year, about a year and a year and a half. The good part about this is that the work is upfront, because in most bid processes, you're just leasing to the tower company. It's straight property. But here, particularly on this renewal process or second time around, you needed to craft the request for bids in a way that all of the companies were working together, including the possibility that there'd be some companies that were there now that didn't bid that will remain. So you had both the new companies and a combination of the new and the old, and structuring that together with Dave Maxon out of Medfield, one of the leading experts in wireless, who originally came up with this concept, and he and I pursued it and accomplished it for the town last time. So it was a long time coming, but the beauty was we had time. And to really give the board credit, the board really understood a year and a half ago, or even more, when you asked the town administrator to work on this, that it made sense to do this early, when there was time to put the document together, when there was time that if something didn't go right, there'd be time to have another process. So it really was the board's vision on this, which we debated, and which, you're the board, but we ended up saying, the board's right. Now's the time to go out, even though there's 4 years left on the lease. And to do that, we told people, we gave them encouragement, these companies, to bid, but saying, if you don't bid, you're still there for 4 years. And the beauty is, as Ms. Hunter said, that they saw their interest, and we saw your interest, and your interest is a good funding for the next 20 years. And that's why the stars were aligned to have a good result for both sides. So thank you.
Thanks, Bill. I just, sometimes we do this stuff and it takes 5 minutes at the Board of Selectmen meeting. And I wanted to make sure that people who either are on the meeting now or look at the YouTube understand that there's an awful lot of work that we don't actually talk about that actually gets done to get to this very successful conclusion. So I just want to say, I know it was a long time. We had several meetings. I'm glad it worked out well, and I appreciate all your help.
Thank you.
Yeah. We may recall, I believe, Bill, we made the decision to go to the market and to go for a market rate bid in May of last year. It was May of last year, so we would have the ability to literally go out to bid all of, as you described, all of the providers, rather than just have the primary rate or the single rate adjustment. But I thought that was time very well spent, and clearly it worked out in our benefit. So
thank you.
Yeah, it's well done. If there's no other questions or comments, I moved to authorize the town administrator to execute all documents related to the AT&T lease between Dover and AT&T Corporation, DBA AT&T Mobility, and ask for a second.
It may just be heard on that. And you're correct. I'm sure the town administrator is the contracting authority. For whatever reason, the last time around, it was signed by the board, and I think that's, having mentioned that, you do want the town administrator, because he's your, as you implicitly say, he's the contracting authority. Unless there's a reason not to have the board's signature on there, it seems to me that having the board plus the town administrator would make some sense. It's a lease. I'm sure you approve leases. He may sign them. It may be the reason the town, through its town council last time, thought the board should sign is the fact that it was a lease, not a service or good contract. So I do think, better part of wisdom, without researching it further, is to add the town administrator to the signing, but at the same time, unless there's reason not to have the board sign also.
Well, in the motion that I just made, Bill, we moved the town administrator to execute all documents. We, the 3 selectmen, would sign as well, but we're authorizing Chris to execute the documents.
Okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood, so thank you.
Okay. Robin, Bob, would you like to Any clarification on that? It seems pretty straightforward to me, but would you like to comment on that before we second the motion?
No, I think that's clear, John. I'm okay.
Robin?
Yeah, I'm okay too.
Okay, so I'll ask for a second.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye, John Jeffries.
I, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springett. Thanks again, Bill.
Thank you. And one last point. AT&T is the lead bidder. They're in charge of the tower. They have most of the responsibilities. In the next 2 weeks, I'll be finalizing the leases with the two other companies, Verizon and T-Mobile. Now this lease is completed, and I expect to be back before the board at either 2 weeks or shortly thereafter with the vote and approval of the leases for the two tenants who are not the lead tenant. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Bye-bye. Thank you, folks.
Thank you. So we're going to move to our next item, which is the order of assignments for the 2022 annual town meeting warrant articles. We have our town moderator and assistant town moderator with us this evening. So we're going to ask their opinions, and we're going to be calling upon them, Jim and Dave both. From a summary standpoint, the board will order to sign the 2022 annual town meeting warrant articles. Jim Repetius, our town moderator, our assistant town moderator, Dave Haviland, town clerk Felicia Hoffman, also present to discuss the plans of the 2022 annual town meeting. Jim, would you like to start us off just with an overview or your thoughts on where we currently stand?
Yeah, sure. We met earlier this week, and we think probably the most prudent way to proceed is to plan on having a meeting Monday and Tuesday evening at the high school. And if it turns out that we have to make adjustments before then because of COVID, based on the advice of the Board of Health and also the Board of Selectmen, we can always declare an emergency and move it out up to 30 days. We thought about trying to move to a Saturday, and it just seemed like there were too many moving pieces to do it this quickly. So we thought it would be much better to just go steady on the helm, follow the procedure that we've followed in the past, and plan definitely on a Monday night, and it's very likely we're going to have a Tuesday night as well. I'll try to conduct the meeting the way I have in the past, try to do it very expeditiously. And at 10 o'clock, we'll see how far along we are. If we're not far enough to try to get out of there by 11, I'll postpone or suspend the meeting until Tuesday, the next day, and then we'll proceed again. The only other thing that I might mention, fellas, is I noticed that one of the citizens petitions, I think it's number 28 on the recent draft, is a petition by students in is it the high school or the middle school? And I was wondering whether you might want to move them up so that we could consider them earlier in the meeting so that they don't have to stay late. And that was my only thought there in terms of the ordering of the warrant articles. And then with respect to Hale, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, we talked about having a special town meeting for that. I strongly encourage you to do that. I think that it's going to take a lot of time, even with a 2-day annual town meeting. I don't think we would get through Hale. And I think it deserves full attention as an agenda item by itself. And let me throw it back to you.
Jim,
I'm sorry, did I lose you? I'm sorry.
No, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can. I lost you for a second. Sorry, go ahead.
So just with regards to Hale, we definitely would have, we are all in agreement that Hale would be a separate town meeting in the fall.
Right.
Yeah, so that's we really have debated that amongst many groups, and that's something we were all in agreement with. We'll be a little bit more on that later. That's number one, right off the top. Number two, the petition from the students is a non-binding resolution that we certainly can move earlier in the evening. I don't view that, in my opinion, as being a very lengthy article. We will limit the number of minutes that they will present. We certainly can limit the amount. You have your discretion to limit the amount of debate. I don't think that that's going to be rather a contested item. Bob or Robin, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think Jim's point is that given all the Warrant articles, it's going to be much later in the evening. And should we move it up earlier in the evening, regardless of whether or not it's going to be a catalyst for a lot of discussion? I think that was the point Jim was trying to make.
Right, it's just that it's a school night, and the kids are gonna be up late.
Sure. Agreed. I think my point was, I think that's really easy to do. I think it would be very easy to put the kids right after the consent agenda items.
Okay, good.
Can I just, Bob, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I haven't, yes, I was just looking at the list to see where it might be sort of a good break point. And what were you thinking, John, in terms of immediately or?
Right after the consent agenda items. I just don't think there's going to be a lot of discussion and debate about it. It's, as I said, it's a non-binding resolution, and I think it's more of a political statement really than anything else.
So what are the consent agenda items?
Those end at item right before appropriations. So
okay, so after 3.
4, I think.
Well, 4 says appropriate for the operating budget. So I was thinking before we get into the operating budget would be a good place to as well.
Yeah.
So
and I defer to Jim and to Dave in terms of exact placement, but
if I may, Mr. Chairman?
sure, good.
One of the other things that we had discussed that we would just like the board to consider is it's very difficult for us in a vacuum to ascertain whether a Saturday town meeting is viable and desirable. And so what we had tossed around is asking you to consider as the Board of Selectmen whether or not a forum to the citizenry to find out whether or not there's appetite to have town meeting on a Saturday versus a Monday night. And then the other thing, which Jim did say, but I just want to make sure, especially for Bob, in our previous meetings to try and make sure that town meeting doesn't drag on. In our best estimates, this town meeting is going to go 2 nights, which we haven't had in a long time. And what Jim had talked about was perhaps getting to Article 19 in ascertaining the time. And if it's much earlier than we thought, then run for luck and see if we can get it all done in one night. But if not, and it's later than we thought, just let the meeting know that we're going to cut it off here and adjourn to the following evening, so we don't have this drag on to 11 o'clock or later. So those were the 2 things that we had also discussed that I just wanted to share with you. And we don't need an answer now, and we certainly don't need the forum to happen now, but it might be a good thing to do for the future, so that as we're wrestling with options, is this an option that's good for the town or not?
So would it be inappropriate? We're going to have a ballot, and I don't even know if it's allowed, but would it be inappropriate to have just a non-binding question on the ballot at the bottom? Would you be in favor of moving town meeting to Saturday?
I personally think that would, the point here is to gather information that we all
Right.
use.
Right.
So that if that's the best way to do it, then great.
I don't know. It's just a thought because, a lot of people vote, or they vote, they can vote by mail, and maybe that way we'll get, more participants. Jim?
I think that's a great idea. The only thing I would add to it is I still think it's helpful to have a forum where people can present their views so that when people go to vote, at least those who participated in the forum will have had a chance to think about the pros and cons. A couple of years ago, I floated this idea, and there were some people who were pretty vehemently opposed to it, either because of sports or going away for the weekend. Early May is prime trout fishing season. So there were a number of
that. Everybody knows that. Right.
Right.
Especially the first Saturday in May, right?
Right.
The trout are always running then.
Yeah, right. So some of my fly tying friends were quite insistent that a Saturday wouldn't work as well as an evening. So it might be worthwhile to have a forum. One other thing that I wanted to mention, and this is really for Kate to think about, and Rob's not here, is when we have the open hearing, we probably should think about having it at the high school. So that we can socially distance, because that will be coming earlier, and it would be really helpful then. I think that will give us a really good idea of how long the town meeting is going to go. When we watch the open hearing, we'll get an idea of how controversial stuff's going to be. And we can also, as we do in the past, we use it as a way to time the presentations and make sure people understand that they're limited in the amount of time that they have for their presentation.
So Jim, you think the open hearing should be moved from the Great Hall to Mudge?
We were toying with that, only, John, just thinking that it might be that more people would feel comfortable coming to the high school where they could spread out a little bit more versus at the Great Hall. I myself personally would feel pretty comfortable at either, but I know some people are still pretty apprehensive about, sitting too close together. And where we have the open hearing so early in the spring, it might be a way to get more of a participation, more citizen participation. And that will help give us a better idea, a more accurate idea of how quickly we're going to be able to proceed through these items.
Okay.
That's
Thank you.
a good suggestion.
Yeah, we would just have to check on obviously availability and make sure obviously it doesn't conflict with any performances or things that may be happening in the auditorium. Jim, have you given consideration to the planning board, and the planning board articles are a very big part of this. So it seems like that's going to be a lot of time in terms of the aggregate amount. So would you consider taking all of those items and moving those items specifically to Saturday?
You mean or Tuesday night?
Or Tuesday night, yeah, the dedicated day.
Yeah, I would. What I was thinking about when we met earlier this week is I was just toying with the idea of, if we get to 19, which is the first planning board article, and it's 9:30, then I might try to run for luck to get through the meeting, because that would give me an hour and a half maybe to get through all the articles. On the other hand, if it's 10 o'clock and we're just getting to 19, at that moment, I would probably suspend the meeting and carry it over till the next evening. So I thought that, it might be appropriate to maintain flexibility. And as I've done in the past, you fellas know, when it gets to be around 10 o'clock, I'll ask those who are still assembled and still awake, what do you fellas think? Do you want to go for it, or do you want to come back tomorrow night? And so we'll be able to get a read on it as well. But, I'm certainly open to ideas. Whatever you fellows think would work well, I'm all ears.
When you've asked that question in the past, I don't think a single person in the audience has ever said, let's move to another night. We're in, they're committed. They're in for the night and they're going to get through this. So,
right.
No, that's So thank you. Robin, Bob, comments?
So, if the high school isn't available, I don't know if maybe the auditorium or the cafeteria, Chickering, which is also larger, and I think they have audiovisual availability as well over there. That might be another option for us, but I think it's a good idea to consider other options. And I agree with you. It should be a decent gauge of how long town meeting's going to be.
Can I jump in with one thought? It's Felicia. And that thought is we have to remember that we record the open hearing. So we have to think very carefully about where we go to make sure that it can be televised for those who don't go out in the evenings.
Oh,
Thank you, Felicia.
all of these are good things to consider, Felicia. And also if it's going to be streamed on Zoom, would people be more inclined to just watch it from home? And is there a way to get participation via Zoom? I don't know if that's something people want to consider.
Jim, have we discussed like the participation by Zoom for town meeting when you went through all of the gyrations, when we went through all the gyrations of the first COVID town meeting?
You can't do it for town meeting because there's no way to vote.
Because you can't vote, right? So you
Right. Well, also Secretary Galvin is very firm. He will allow it for representative town meetings, but he will not allow it for open town meetings. So none of the statutes, none of the emergency statutes that were adopted permitted it for open town meetings. That's why, as you fellows know, I was teaching for Zoom and I would have 140 students on Zoom, and we had a dialogue using the Socratic method going back and forth. I thought it worked very well, and I thought we could get it to work for a town meeting, but Secretary Galvin is very strongly opposed to that.
Understood. Bob, questions, comments?
I guess I have two comments. One, whatever we do at town meeting in May, two nights, we should definitely try to do it indoors. I don't really feel right. I don't want to be running away from thunderstorms. And I think even last time when the weather was much improved, I thought it was particularly windy. It was hard to shuffle through all the papers. So I would strongly recommend that wherever we do it in May, and how many days or nights it takes, that we do it indoors. The second comment is, we have a very good audio visual setup in the town hall now. And I don't know if people could participate by video and be allowed to vote. I simply don't know the answer to that question, but certainly if you wanted to have the most people attend, having the Zoom capability, having people able to at least log on and and hear what's going on, that would be, I think, pretty good. And obviously, if we had a Board of Selectmen meeting, they also film it. So you have the film and you have the Zoom component and a hybrid meeting. But I just don't know if you can actually do that and if the results would be legal.
The only time we've come close to that, Bob, is for the rail trail, when we had the main auditorium and the cafeteria staffed.
Yeah.
We had the presentation presented via audio, via visual into the cafeteria. We also had the high school gym available if we needed it for overflow of the cafeteria. But
people were physically there, John. I'm talking about people just appearing on the screen.
Now that was my point.
Possible?
The reason we were able to do that is we could actually have the constables count the votes right there in person. So, and I guess that's probably how where Galvin may be firm on this, because there would be no way to actually have a constable authorize, or supervise the vote.
Yeah, I understand, but I'm just trying to draw a distinction between a town meeting and the caucus.
On the caucus. Got it. Jim, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we could check to see if it's technically feasible. I'm certainly open to it. I know I've attended conferences where there's been via Zoom, and people have participated in the give and take, having debates and discussion, and it worked pretty well. But there was a technical person who was kind of controlling the whole flow. And so I don't know whether we have that capacity here. And I agree 100%. I think we all do. I think it's much better to have it indoors than outdoors. And Felicia, has suggested that what we can do is definitely plan on having it in the auditorium and the cafeteria. So if people want to spread out, they're able to do that. And if we have to, we can also use the gymnasium as we did for the rail trail. Right. So, there's plenty of space indoors that, so long as the Board of Health is on board with it, we should be able to do it, and people can stay as far apart as they like.
Yeah. Carol Lisbon, do you have any comments on these planning boards, the sort of the idea of the planning board being specifically together on one night, or separate, or just in any way segmenting this so we have a specific focus on those planning board articles?
Sure. Thanks, John. I know that there's been a lot of comment that the thinking is that with 6 articles, that it's going to be a big chunk of time. And of course, you never know what article is going to take up more time. You can spend more time on something that costs $10 than something that costs $100,000. So you never quite know, right? But a couple of the articles. Let me just grab it. A couple of the articles are almost could be in the consent agenda. The floodplain overlay district. That's an administrative thing to make sure that people can get insurance. The acceptance of the trail easements should not be a time sink. So I'm not sure that it's going to be as time intensive as some folks may think, but I sort of like Jim's approach. I think it's worked in the past, where you sort of take a look around 10 o'clock and see how things, what the situation is, and take it from there. It doesn't, I don't think that we need to have all 6 of them together. So if it's 10 o'clock and we think we could do 2 quickies, I think we could do 2 quickies. I don't think it's necessary to look at them all as a package.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Jim, comments or questions on that, or just are you good with where we are?
I'm good where we are, and I would just like to make sure that Dave and Felicia are on board as well, because they probably have something a lot more intelligent to say than I do.
David?
Not sure about that, Jim, but yes, I'm definitely on board. And again, if we ever are forced to consider or wish to consider a Saturday, it would just be great if you all could have that forum that would allow the town to weigh in, and then we all would at least have some information that we could act on, rather than just our own individual opinions.
And Dave, just to clarify, as Bob was saying, you're not you mean Saturday, but also indoors Saturday. You're not, like we did last time, specifically saying Saturday outside, morning time, Saturday.
Yes,
indoor.
The indoor outdoor, as Jim pointed out, is really a Board of Health issue. I think we all would rather not have everything blowing around in the sun in our eyes and lightning bolts dropping between the goalposts where Jim is standing. But once you remove all that, yes, this is just about whether or not to have it on Saturdays. And one of the things that Felicia already bird dogged for us all is that the Dover Foundation is using the auditorium on the first 2 Saturdays in May. So this year it wouldn't be an option for us anyway, unless we wanted to go to the gym. But you get the idea. It's what is available to us, and what do the town folks want. And if they prefer to have a Saturday town meeting, then we get to make a second decision. But if the overwhelming is no, we wish to continue it on Monday nights. And again, let's ask the people instead of guessing.
Okay. All right, I agree with that, Dave, and it's, I think we're all in that in agreement with that. We'll give a lot of thought to the forum and to what the most efficient way is to disseminate that information and get a lot of feedback, for as much feedback as we can. So
Great. That's it.
Felicia, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, thanks, John. So just so everybody knows, I've already booked for May 2nd and possibly May 3rd if needed at the auditorium and the cafeteria, and I can add other rooms if we need to. So I think that we should just go ahead and assume that we're going to be able to do it indoors. Numbers are coming down. Things are starting to improve. We're certainly not going to be careless of anybody's health. So my vote is just let's go on as if it were a normal year and let's get it done.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I think we all echo that. We are ready to move on. So thank you very much, Felicia. David,
John, I don't know if you see him.
John, just a quick thought. I think that the question of whether we should have it on a Saturday should not be on the table for this year,
right.
But for next year. So in other words, this year, if you want to have the forum or even have it this fall to discuss possibly moving to a Saturday type town meeting, that would be fine. But I think that it's too late in the process to do it this year. I think that, we should just stick with what we know works. And where we know that the rooms are available at the high school, just do it. And then if it turns out, if it's after the forum, and I liked the idea, I thought Robin's idea of a ballot is also excellent. You'll have a few more data points and you'll have more time to think about whether you really want to make that major change to a Saturday. So this year, I would say just full speed ahead on that Monday and Tuesday, the way we've done it in the past.
Great, thank you.
Right,
Thank
and
you.
I agree with Felicia. I think, we should just move forward planning that it's going to be indoors, and I think 2 nights is prudent, and just go from there, because I know, it's always run so smoothly that you don't take time to think about all the planning that goes in to getting it to run smoothly. So.
Agreed. Bob, you get the last word.
Okay.
I'm on board.
I
May
think
it
Dave
is,
Havlin
double
wants to say something too.
I just wanted to say that the lion's share of this planning falls on Felicia, and
Right.
we owe her an intense debt of gratitude every single town meeting. So for those who are listening in, the amount of work that Felicia has to do, we all know, or at least have a pretty good idea, but thank you, Felicia.
How true. Thank you, Felicia.
Well said, Dave. Agreed, Jim. Well, thank you all. Thank you very much. We're going to move on. We will take all of this into consideration, and we're going to move to the next item. So thank you very, very much for this report this evening. The next item on the agenda is 4 Springdale Avenue, the Community Center Building Site Plan Review. The site plan review of the Community Center Building will be presented and discussed. I spoke earlier this evening with Carol Lisbon, and I believe also we have with us, I just switched my screen for 1 second, so I'm going to go back to our gallery, and John Richardson is with us as well.
Yes, I am.
And John, I would like to start with you, if you don't mind. We went through this and went through the process pretty thoroughly on Thursday of last week. I'd like to ask you if you wouldn't mind, if you would like to start us off this evening with regard to the review, and if there's anything that you would like to add over and above the items we discussed last week.
Sure. If you could make a Fenwick McCready computer presenter.
Kate, can you do that?
I just have a brief synopsis of what we've talked about before and some
Should be all set.
plans. Okay, thanks. Just make that full screen. So I just have a brief synopsis of the report and recommendations from the planning board of what we've talked about before, just a few slides. And then if we want to talk about traffic, which I assume we will, since that was the main point of discussion last week, I can talk about it a little. And I also have Chelsea Christensen, our civil engineer, whose firm Niche Engineering also employed or did a traffic study for us for the project in October and did a traffic report, which was included in the information provided to the town. So I'll try to be brief, and I think we mainly want to get to questions. This is all from the planning board's report. First, Courtney, the land use director, highlighted the criteria for site plan review. In this case, as a zone O open space official use property, the planning board is not the final body for site plan review. It is you, the selectmen. But all the particulars of zoning compliance with the bylaws have been reviewed by land use director, and that's included in the report that we are compliant with that. The appearance of the building, as mentioned in the report, was reviewed through extensive public meetings, approved at special town meeting. We've worked hard on the building to make it compatible both architecturally to the build structures of center of town, as well as the natural landscape on site. So, it is a natural resource, as was written in the report, and it's a resource for the town, and generally was in compliance with the zoning bylaws. Particular recommendations I've just summarized here. They're of course in the full report, but that there's the first recommendation is that and we agree with all of these, that there be a final submission of the site plan and documentation to land use director once final documents are complete for confirmation that it's in confirmation with everything we've presented before and in compliance with the zoning bylaws. The septic and stormwater plans are being reviewed separately by the the town's engineer, Mike Angieri. And there may, of course, be minor modifications during the construction process. Those will be reviewed first with the land use director. And if it's considered a major modification, we would come back to you, but we don't anticipate that. And then finally, there was a condition that there be no exterior lighting for accessory structures. I believe that was reference to the basketball court and that's not intended to have lighting. I think we showed the lighting plan last time. So just a couple recap images. We want to make clear that the new building is actually half the size of the existing building. So the red lines are the footprint of the existing building. So this would be a brand new, more condensed, very flexible, highly usable building, but it is indeed smaller. And the red portion is the original 1910 schoolhouse that's at the heart of the Carroll School structure. It's all the closest setback is 24 feet at this upper corner, and that's an existing condition from the 1910 schoolhouse. Otherwise, we're further back from the zoning. We've worked hard, and we'll discuss this in a moment, no doubt, but to integrate pedestrian access, bicycle access, as well as traffic access. And we can come back to this colored plan, but again, just to recap, the basic design based on the recommendations of our traffic engineers are that we turn the current exit into a service drive emergency vehicle only lane, and that visitors either park or drop off. There's accessible parking near the front. There's a flush curb here for people with mobility issues. And there's a straightaway that can support several cars or even a bus in the drop-off zone. And then after dropping off, all the cars and SUVs would turn around and come back out onto Whiting Road and exit that way. It is considered more safe to come back to Springfield from Whiting Road than from this service drive, which is kind of too close to the corner and too close to Whiting Road. I think we've talked about everything else. Just to, again, for recap, the basketball court is a half-size basketball court, roughly the same size as what's existing, but now located in the southeastern corner. And we've talked to abutters about that, and that was their preferred space location. So parking capacity and traffic. I showed you this slide last time. I think we got into a little bit of discussion. The bar graphs represent both the maximum calculated use if all our spaces were simultaneously full, which is unlikely. And the red lines represent the historic use from the 2018-2019 data. The actual peak use will probably be somewhere in between. But I think as we were discussing last time, it's important to remember that these are peak uses, the yellow and red bars. And so the actual average use is probably going to be somewhere between 20 and 40 people at any given time when there's not a major event going. That would be, slightly higher than what was happening before. So I think we need to think about this both from its peak usage as well as its regular usage when discussing both parking and traffic. And then I think the final discussion point that you may want to ask questions about was the exiting onto Whiting Road. In our discussions with the planning board, we were asked to have a dual exit. It was felt that would decrease backup when people were leaving and allow for a left and a right-hand turn lane onto Whiting Road, with a further caveat that for large events, which we anticipate to be just a couple times a year, that a police detail be obtained and they stand out on Springdale and manage traffic in these rare events, having people exit through the emergency service lane directly onto Springdale Ave. But again, this right-hand slide is the unusual event. The more typical event, even an event, I think will be handled well just with people exiting onto Whiting Road. So that is kind of a recap of where we were. And then I'm sure people will want to have questions for us.
Thank you, John. Before we entertain questions, Ford, the building committee had a meeting on Monday, the 31st. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Do you have anything to report with regards to this site plan review from that meeting? Is there anything substantive that
No, we think this is fine, and we were delighted that the planning board unanimously approved the proposal that they sent to the selectmen, and we're fine with it.
Okay, thanks, Ford. And thanks, Ford, thanks to the committee and for those, Ruth Townsend, who's on the call this evening, and the other members of the committee that have put a lot of time and energy and effort into this as when you became indentured servants to our request. So we really thank you for this. Carol Lisbon, Planning Board, same question to you. Anything substantive that you would like to add or comments you'd like to make after hearing John's this evening?
Yeah, well, I'd like to thank John for putting it down. And it certainly is a good representation of the site plan review. And of course, the details are there. And as was said, we approved it unanimously. And we thank the building committee for taking into account our comments, starting, I think, back in the spring when we had a preliminary meeting, and then I think 2 or 3 meetings this fall. So, thank you for addressing those. We did send to you a draft of the minutes of our January 10th meeting. And I believe that those were sent to you by email from Chris Trelli today or yesterday. And as I referred to, or tried to refer to at least at your last Thursday's meeting, there's the substantive site plan review that is prescribed by law. And that's what you see in the site plan review document that you have. And then there's the discussion that the five of us had with the team at a meeting on the 10th. And while some of those comments are not prescribed by law for a planning board to put into a site plan review, we thought that as five citizens of Dover who have gone through too many site plan reviews over the last couple of years, that we would like to share with you some thoughts that are outside of our legal statutory responsibility, but that we thought might be valuable as you proceed. Not so much in approving a site plan, but as you think about the operations of the facility. So those are the points that you will see in the minutes that are more representative of the discussion versus just the legal aspect of what we were there to do as a site plan review. And John touched on a bunch of them. Obviously, most of them had to do with parking and traffic and finding a way to monitor that and fine tune it over time as necessary. And also some issues relative to the general management of the facility as it relates to maintaining $60,000 worth of new landscaping and how that stuff gets watered, by what water, and by whom, and so forth. So I don't think there's any need to go through it all tonight, but I would hope that you will have the opportunity, if you haven't already, to read the minutes from that meeting, or at least my personal notes from that meeting. We haven't approved the minutes yet, and take those into account as you proceed with the really fun part, which is getting the building open and operating. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. Robin, comments, questions?
No, so thank you to the planning board for supplying the minutes. It really helped give a little bit of flavor as to the discussions. You know, I think the site plan was reviewed and approved, not reviewed, and there were some carve out items, you know, that the planning board felt were really important to be addressed or to make note of. So, you know, I would really encourage citizens to take a look at that as well. But you know, I appreciate all the work that the planning board and the building committee did. It really helps to bring things into perspective. And, you know, with the planning board's blessing, I certainly support approving the site plan review.
Thank you. Thank you, Robin. I agree with everything you said. Bob, questions, comments?
I think the planning board hit on some key topics. When Ford and I were going around talking to people at other community centers, one of the things they talked about to us was, and we asked them what would they do over again if they had the opportunity. Invariably, they talked about parking. So making sure that we have sufficient parking spaces for users of the community facility, I think it's a big deal. And I know a lot of work has been gone on into this. And so having the way it's been mapped out with main parking and auxiliary parking, I believe covers the issue. But parking is a serious issue. All of the places that we talked to said they underestimated the parking. Number two, I think traffic was a big issue, and I was hoping that we could help people to understand. And I think, John, you did a pretty nice job of emphasizing what the usual use is versus peak use. And last meeting, I was talking about another piece of wisdom that Ford and I heard repeatedly was you have to always realize that for the most of the usual circumstances, the community facility will have a life cycle. Everybody's not going to drive there at 9 o'clock in the morning, 100, whatever the number is, and spend through the day. There's a flow of traffic that moves through the day. And I think in John, on your slide, I think you're saying there was somewhere between 22 and 40 cars. So there's already, so we're starting with 22 to 40 cars. That would sort of be business as usual. And I really want to emphasize that point that people come and go throughout the day. The only time when you have peak demand is the two times that I know about are special events. And we as a town know how to handle special events. We do it all the time. It's not something outside of our normal course of business, whether it's a town meeting or a food clinic or handing out test kits for the town. So we know how to do that. The other activity that gets a fair amount of action is when COA, I don't know if Janet's on the call, but when the COA has a luncheon, and they generally get 40 to 60 people. So you have, and that happens on I wouldn't say on a regular basis, but it happens periodically. So those sort of what I would call special events need special consideration. And then we sort out the management of the facility and who will be responsible for doing the things that Carol enumerated. I think we'll be in fine shape. So I'm pretty comfortable with the work that's been done. I know the folks who've been doing it and they've been working pretty hard. But I do think it's very important to have a sharp eye on parking and traffic. And as we move through time, we'll learn more about it. But right now, I'm very comfortable. Now, Carol, when we met last time, was talking about the site plan. And John, could you just bring us up to date? I'm going to take advantage of having my colleagues on the Board of Selectmen get a little firsthand knowledge. Can you just give us an update where you are on the site plan now?
Right. As you know, Bob, we were talking at the building committee meeting this week about getting back on budget. We're about $330,000 over budget. So obviously we want to keep all the core functionality and preserve the building most importantly. So we were looking, and I think this came up last week, at what was considered VE. We're looking at some things like changing the roof of the pavilion from the original design of slate, actual slate, to asphalt shingles, architectural shingles. We're looking at making the re-roofing of the 1910 building, maybe an add alternate. And we have reduced the planting budget significantly. We've taken out approximately $60,000 worth of plantings. That will also make it more manageable and will allow the town to come back and do more plantings at their time of their desire post-construction. We're considering, for similar purposes, deferring the perimeter walking path because that's something that can be added. It will be graded for this accessible walking path, and that's something that can be added by the town DPW at any time. Along those lines, the swing play structure, which is shown here, we're looking at moving that out of the construction budget, saving general contractor markup on that, and having the Parks and Rec department procure that directly through a vendor through the project still, but outside of the construction project. And those were the major value engineering items. I think we mentioned last time that in addition to the plantings, we have deleted the rain garden and are going to just have an area drain for that.
Thank you, John. Ford, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Oh, John hit it very well. And our primary concern is Monday night. Anybody wants to watch us, we're meeting again, building committee, and we're working on the budget. We need to be on budget when we go out for bids, which will be taking place in March for our general contractor and our subs. So that it's critical that we do that. That discussion will take place and hopefully be completed by Monday night.
So would it be fair to say that as we go on through the process of trying to live within the budget, that we're at least anticipating taking a phased approach to some of these things, concentrating on getting the core structures, the core structure up and in and done, and that things that we think, or the building committee thinks, can be phased in over time. We're gonna sort of put that in.
That's correct.
2 or 3. Is that right?
That's correct. John indicated that, the plannings, for example, all that can be done after the project's completed and funded in various ways. And same way with the path. So those things that are exterior of the building are easily added. In my experience and 2 other projects, that's exactly what we did. So we can do that again if need be. We need to make sure that the building is done properly and that it be long lasting, so the town will not have to do any major work. You'll always have some work, but any major work over the next 20 to 40 years or so. So, that's our goal, and we're going to be able to do that and I have no question in my mind, we're doing that.
Thanks, Ford. Now, I got a call on Phil because he was here really early. Phil, say something wise.
No, so like John mentioned a couple weeks ago, our initial pass at the first or the final round of estimate reconciliation, we were over budget. But in working with the building committee, we developed a good value engineering list. Had a lot of back and forth over the past two weeks with them. So we're at a good place where we're going to go into bid on budget.
All right, Phil, thanks. I think John Bates is on. John, last word.
Nothing left to say, Mr. Springett. I'm speechless. It's all been covered, but I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you all.
Thank you, guys. John, thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Well done. So where we are this evening, we obviously have a suggested motion. There's quite a few other people on the chat, and Kate or Dave Sullivan, because our screen's being shared and I can't see the chat. Are there any questions or any others?
Let me help.
Thank you very much. Any other attendees this evening that we've missed or you would like to share comments? Obviously, we've got John Bates, John Richardson, Phil Palumbo. We've heard from Carol, Ford. Thank you. Now I can see. Kate, anything on the chat?
No.
Thank you. And Dave Sullivan, anyone from the gallery standpoint that would like to be recognized?
I don't see any raised hands and nothing in the chat, as Kate said.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to thank everyone this evening for the presentations. And again, Ford, in my world, this is bonus season. And typically in our world, your bonus is between 300% and 400% of your base salary. So as the person who's in charge of your committee, what kind of bonuses should your committee expect this year?
I think that's great. And Carol has heard me say this before. The bonuses can be your donation of money to this project. And I would invite you to, Carol is already stepping up. So I would invite you to step up also, John, substantially more than Carol. And,
John has the big bucks for
there are lots of things that I can tell you where you can invest your money, and we'll have a conversation with that maybe tomorrow morning.
I'll go with that one.
Bright and early, Ford. You have to get them early.
Maybe tomorrow morning. So on that note, I move to approve the site plan application for the community center building with the conditions listed in the planning board memo to the Board of Selectmen dated January 25th, 2022. Ask for a second.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye, John Jeffries.
Hi, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springett.
So again, thank you, everyone. We're in a good place. I've said this to you many times. I feel like this is a constantly moving target, but we are all aiming at the right place and we're all on the same page. And that's where we have to be. So thank you all for your dedication, your leadership, your time, your energy, all the hours that you've put into this. And we've still got a long way to go, but we're going in the right direction. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have to scroll through about 62 pages to get to the next items. The next item on the agenda this evening are the Board of Selectmen updates. I'm going to read through my updates, and we've had a extremely busy week. Many of you that are on the call this evening know that we had Hail Task Force, that we had Zoning Board of Appeals, and we had the open space all in the same night on Tuesday night. We had Warrant last night. I feel like I've been on Zoom calls pretty much every hour of the evening this week. So we and in addition to that, on Monday we had our union negotiation contract with the Highway Department, which is moving along very well. So expect more on that within the next couple of weeks. That took place on Monday. Hail reservation, as I mentioned, the Hail Task Force met on Tuesday. We had a very substantive discussion on Tuesday, and we're in agreement on our positions moving forward. With open space also met on the same evening. And there's really nothing in addition to mention to everyone this evening, other than we are all, as I said earlier, on the same page with regards to the Hail project, and we are going to be working very closely with each other moving forward. The ZBA item that we sat in on was an update on where the ZBA has received the information from Red Robin, and they are deliberating before they decide what their next steps are. That will take place in their March 1st meeting. And test kits. So a very hearty thank you to everyone who was involved in the test kits. Kate, would you like to just give a quick summary of the test kit distribution today at the RDF?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So with like anything in Dover, it was a complete collaboration, teamwork. So me and Kay and Janet and Dave have been meeting for a week and a half, trying to figure out how to get this going. But today, for 4 hours, I believe we had 6 or 7 volunteers of staff. We handed out over 300 test kits, but it's probably higher than that. We just don't have the final numbers. And it went smoothly. It was great. Everyone was appreciative. And now we'll probably assess, how much we have left, and seeing the weather. There are a lot of factors that go into like an event like this, but hold another one next week. But really, we wouldn't have been able to do it without Janet and her grab and go experience and advice and things I didn't even think about. And her staff helped as well. And Dave, again, thank you so much. And Carl, and of course Bobby, the police chief, like everyone, it helped, and it just turned out great. So we know a lot more now. So I think we can hold another one next week as well. But we'll be getting that information out.
Terrific. And the weather cooperated. Although, Kate, groundhog did see his shadow yesterday, so you got another 6 weeks of winter. So we're gonna have to be dealing with some winter elements in this.
Right. We're looking at the weather next week. I think we have a sunny day, like on a Thursday. So I think we're gonna shoot for that day. But once we finalize it, people will have much more notice than they did this week. So
awesome. Janet, thank you for your help and your guidance and your expertise on this.
You're welcome. I thought the event came together really well, and everybody just kind of pulled together and made it happen. And having it at the transfer station, it made it a very smooth area. The people were very appreciative of receiving test kits as they came through. They're very grateful to the town for providing them.
That's nice to hear. Thank you. Thank you. And, thank you as always for your help and support on these items. Robin, report?
So I'll be quick. We had the first Water Resource Task Force review of our first RFQ. I thought it went really well. As you all know, there's a small group. It consists of a member from the planning board, a member from the Water Resource Committee. So it's Ron Myrick, George Sedgwick, and myself as a member of the Board of Selectmen. Also, Carl was there, Dave was there, and saved my life because I forgot it was the 3rd, and even though it was on my calendar, I drove to work. So Dave was able to quickly maneuver things so I could participate via Zoom. Courtney was there as well. I was so impressed by the presentation that was given. Really hit everything in the RFQ. And I think we have another meeting next week. I think it's gonna be really hard to make a decision. It was I was just blown away. It was really good. So I look forward to reporting back on the next presentation.
Thank you very much. What's Rio chewing in the background?
His antler.
Is what?
His antler.
His antler.
No, it's Greg. It's Greg.
He's on the injured reserve list after having knee surgery, and this is the only enjoyment he gets out of life right now. He has another 9 weeks of not walking.
But he has you there to take care of him. That's got to be, right up there.
Yeah, it's got to be right up there.
I will go on mute so you don't have to. I'm so used to it, I don't even hear it anymore.
It sounds like he's chewing the leg of a table.
It's an elk antler.
Elk antler. Okay.
There's a leg of the table.
Yeah, there you go. Bob, anything to add?
Well, I, as a former, manager, I handled my responsibilities tonight by delegating my report on Carol to Ford and to John. I also had Mr. Bates in there as well, and Phil. So I'm done unless there are questions.
None for me. Thank you very much. You have the list of future meetings in front of you. Anything to add or anything you'd like to before we move on to the consent agenda? Anything you'd like to note?
Somehow
I'm extremely appreciative of not having a meeting next Thursday night.
It seems like, Robin, it seems like we've met every Thursday night for the past 2 months.
We have.
It has been a hectic January.
But what I want to know is we've had 3 meetings in a row. How does that February 17th one get so long?
Yeah, there's a lot. It's a lot there. Actually, a lot of those items, Bob, the ambulance review, the rates,
quick votes,
are very quick votes. Those
Yeah.
are already items that half of those agenda items are very quick consent items.
Well, that'd be very nice after the last 3 Thursdays, so that'd be good.
Maybe we should move some of the jokes to the consent agenda.
Oh, that hurts. Right to the quick, Robin.
Somebody's feelings got hurt. So
she's really annoyed by the dog eating the antlers there.
Before we move to the consent agenda, Ms. Hunter, our assistant town administrator, Kate O'Brien, has stepped in, done yeoman's work for Mr. Chris Dwelly. She deserves recognition for this evening and everything she did yesterday and today, tomorrow, and in Chris's absence. So Kate, well done. Anything that you would like to add, or would you like to bring to our attention with regards to the updates for the town?
Well, first of all, thank you. But I do want to add one thing, is that I think a vote, and I don't think we voted for the order of the articles, but I think since we decided on the day and time and location, I think that would be helpful if we could get a vote for that.
A vote for the warrant articles.
No, a vote for the location and the day.
Of the warrant,
Oh, yep, so I make a motion that we approve the first Monday in May and the Tuesday following for town meeting.
Do you have to add location at the?
At the Mudge Auditorium.
yeah.
Okay, second.
All in favor? I, John Jeffries,
I, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springer. Is that what you wanted, Kate?
2022.
It was on my to-do list from Chris.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
why is he AWOL, by the way? We should deduct pay.
No, me and Dave are running things, but we're doing a
Oh,
great
that's
job.
even, yeah.
And Dave, I got rave reviews about the meeting you had with the Water Resource Committee. They said it was really helpful. And the other thing is, well, I mean, you heard the kudos from the consulting firm about how the that we now show the monitoring on our website. They thought it was great that we were showing the well levels.
Yeah, I was very excited to see that in their presentation. So that was a little bonus.
Right.
And yes, and so the presentation went very well, and it will be something that I'll be sharing with the board as well on the 17th. So I'll be part of the reason why it's so long.
Speak really quickly.
I'll try as fast as I can.
Thanks, Dave. Kate, anything, Kate, your items for administrator update?
I'm all set, John.
Terrific. Well, thank you. Thank you. Then we're going to move to the consent agenda. And Bob would be happy to know that February 12th and 19th, there are parties that you didn't get invited to.
Oh, the old jokes, John, they're the best.
I know.
John, I am so used to being unpopular that it does not matter. I am the most unpopular person in many instances.
Perfectly fine with all three of us. And we, the liquor licenses and the open session meeting minutes. I move to approve the consent agenda as presented and ask for a second.
I will second that.
All in favor? I, John Jeffries.
I, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springer.
Thank you very much for both of those. And that is our meeting for this evening. Thank you all very much. Lots and lots of items we covered this evening in the past couple of weeks, and I really appreciate the time that everybody's put in and the energy. So as I said earlier, and with regards to this, we're going in the right direction. I move to adjourn and ask for a second.
Second.
All in favor? I, John Jeffries.
I, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springer.
Dave,
Stay
Kate.
off the roads tomorrow, guys. Be
Yeah,
careful.
Dave, Kate, be careful driving. Thank you all. Jim, Dolly, Sir James of the Fences, you're the best fence viewer I've ever known.
And maybe the last.
All right, folks, have a great evening.
I feel like I should have my sword now and just go.
Yeah.
Sir
You
James.
must have had a snack.
Good night, everyone. Thanks again.
Bye-bye.
Actually,
Thank you
for
all
the
very much.
record, Rio has 2 antlers.
2 antlers.
I just noticed that. How did you get 2?
Good night.
Good night.